Since its beginning, China has always been an important country with a latent power because of its big population and economy. Their importance in world's economy can be seen with the Silk Road and the early use of paper money and coins. Between 1820 and 1949 they collapsed because social and political instabilities, civil wars and Japanese invasions. It was in 1950 when they retook a growth path which was impulsed in 1978 with the implementation of structural reforms based on Marxist principles by Deng Xiaoping. These reforms tried to relate the labor force and relations of production in the most efficient way in order to optimize a sustainable and high development. This plan of reforms was executed with a long-term goal to improve four specific aspects of the country, called the Four Modernizations: agriculture, industry, national defense and technology. To accomplish that they implemented some of these reforms. Agricultural reform. They started in 1978 distributing land to the peasants in order to increase production, achieving a launch of productivity in the first years, but then it showed some defects that had to be taken into account. Opening to the outside reforms. It consisted in attracting more FDI, by making it easier, also by improving the infrastructure, understanding its importance to reduce unemployment and enhance growth. They also attempted to promote relations with other countries, achieving big growth. Opening to the outside had a cost for China, because they had to adopt foreign technologies and methods which they were not keen to, because of their protectionism and nationalism. Hence it led to some protests which were stopped by the government. Industrial reforms. In the 80s they found out the importance of the industrial sector as a key to their growth, therefore they saw three necessities. Invigorate more enterprises. Make efforts to develop a socialist market for goods. Establish a new system of socialist macroeconomic management. It led to more competitive enterprises. Financial system reforms. The lack of a bank system was a problem for China because it didn't allow them to have a good financial system. The Popular Bank of China was in charge of everything, but then in 1981, they received the responsibility of a central bank. Therefore the Industrial Bank of Commerce was created with credit functions, as well as some others new sectorial banks. Then in 1997 a new reform was established and these banks became traditional commerce banks. Labor reform. This reforms aim to normalize and regulate the labor in China, which until 1986 was only hereditary. Finally, in 1994 new reforms were established to protect the children and women. Management reforms. The PCCH admitted the necessity of a political change as well, therefore, they have attempted to get rid of the centralization and bureaucracy, giving importance to the democracy and trying to be more efficient. Jiang Zemin reforms. When he arrived to the power, he tried to correct the mistakes of former reforms, achieving to give China one of its most prosperous growth. Hu Jintao reforms. In 2004 the government intervention in foreign investment was simplified, reducing tariff rates for imports. In 2007 the national currency was revaluated to 1%, allowing a more flexible exchange rate versus dollar. These reforms brought benefits to China, turning it into one of the most important economies in the world the past few years. This allowed China to grow sustainably on average more than 10% each year between 1990 and 2010. Then they got to be considered as an emergent economy, due to their importance in the global scenario. This can be understood as an evolution towards a multipolar economic international order. Then the emergent countries started to be recognized, and one of the most important blocs formed was the BRICS, conformed by Brazil, Russia, India and China in 2001, and then also by South Africa in 2010. This bloc has a significant influence in the government of the world economy. They are all developing countries, with a big-sized economy and a high potential, even if they have as well been affected by the harsh economic context of the last years. Despite all this, Inequality increased dramatically, mostly in the rural areas, with a Gini coefficient in 2010 of 48.1, very similar to the one of Latin American countries. These inequalities and contradictions had made China seem as a country without the ability to develop their entire potential. If they don't overcome the social and economic difficulties, all the process is jeopardized. The growth has been slowing down, passing from 10.6% in 2010 to 6.9% in 2015, showing all the structural economic problems that the country has. Like, for example, the inevitable problem of over-indebtedness and overcapacity, due to their big exportation and accumulation of capital in order to attend foreign markets. Low participation of the consumption in their economy. The underdeveloped stock markets very prone to recessions. High dependency with the prices of the stock market. Antiquated financial system. High interventionism of the state. Low development of high-end sectors, like the sector of high-tech services. Big inequality in the country. Almost all the wealth is in the urban sector, thus wasting the potential of the rural sector, among others. All this puts in danger the main long-term purpose of a sustainable growth. Therefore, the President Xi Jinping will implement a new plan of reforms in order to rebalance the Chinese economy and try to overcome those problems. The president affirms that the economic model of China needs a renovation, because the last one is no longer sustainable. He says that some painful reforms are needed in order to become a country of innovation that can maintain a high medium economic growth rate. Some of the most important goals to review of the reforms are: the consumption and the sector of services would have more importance in the economy. Economy used to be based on exportation, industry and investment. Now they want the domestic consumption and the services play a much important role in the GDP. Anyways, there's a contradiction at the moment of execute it because of the low income and poverty of much part of the population. Reduce the inequality and poverty and try to increase the life expectancy of the population. The 5% of the people are in an extreme poverty situation. That means approximately 56 million people. That is more than the population in Colombia. Hence they have a plan with the goal that in 2021 they could eradicate all the extreme poverty and create 50 new million jobs. Improve the sectors of high technology and quality goods. China is seen as a big power in innovation and technology. The government encourages companies invent technologies and patent them. Some companies such as Huawei, ZTE and Chevy have done it. They also have the advantage of having cheap labor, being this part of the transformation that China has faced the last 38 years. The rapid increase in innovation in public and private enterprises in China are actively based in high computing technology, communications and video games. This shows the track that China is taking, based in the quantitative waves theory. All these developments and attempts to innovate could make them become a superpower country worldwide. Additional to this, China is a fundamental country for internet because of their number of users and their intensity of making use of it. In against of the anti-globalization position that many countries have adopted after the 2008 crisis, China wants a more wide and inclusive global economy. During all the reforms, China has attempted to increase their commercial relations with the other countries. Hence, they entered in the WTO in 2001, and also they had signed many different FTAs with the ASEAN, Pakistan, Chile, New Zealand, Singapore, Peru, Costa Rica, Iceland, Switzerland, and Korea. Now they are attempting to keep growing in this area. That's why they are now negotiating FTAs with GCC, Japan, Korea, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Georgia, RCEP, and upgraded negotiations with the ASEAN. And for the future they have under consideration FTAs with India, Colombia, Moldova, Fiji, and Nepal. By the moment the only regional alliances where they are involved are the SCO, which has mainly a security-related concern. They have also talked about a free trade area which has not yet been achieved, and the APEC, which doesn't have either a main focus in economic integration. With the ASEAN they have a close relation, and have already FTAs, and with the TPP, their intentions are not clear, as their intentions to join it or not, are not yet understood. Some people see this openness to the outside as one of the main factors of China's success with the reforms, as they do have strong neighbors to have commerce with, allowing them to learn from their methods and to have important trade. Other more specific objectives of the new reforms: Yen create a modern financial system, procure a better distribution of capital. Yen promote the decentralization and foment the entrepreneurship. Nowadays, China is considered as a semi-periphery country in which they export some high-profit consumptions goods to periphery countries, but they also export cheap labor and low-profit goods to core countries. With these current reforms we could interpret that China wants in a long term be able to belong to the core countries, but for that they need to increase in a bigger way the high-end sectors, tries to make the labor of the country more productive, and improve the strength of their economy in general. As we saw before, the new reforms attempt to work these features in a long term, in order to be a more powerful country worldwide that could bring more competition to the great current strength of the US economy and tries to balancing the world. Since its beginning, China